Gobekli Tepe temple, dedicated to the star Sirius, 11,500 years old, the Garden of Eden, an Atlantean civilization. This was recently found, excavated. It was covered, others say intentionally. I believe it was some kind of a geological astronomical event, perhaps the Younger Dryas comet. This is around the time of 12,000 years ago when we had the comet impact. But let's see what this has to do, because they tie it into Bethlehem and Nazareth of Israel. Now, Gobekli Tepe is the Turkish location near the border with Syria, 15 kilometers from the city of Urfa. And in the light temples, 11,500 years ago, the stones are 5,500 years older than the first cities of Mesopotamia. In Secret Doctrine I-323-324, Elena Blavatsky writes, hieroglyphics, numbers, and internal symbols are found in Egypt, Peru, Mexico, the Easter Islands, India, Chaldea, meaning the Chaldeans of Middle East, and Central Asia. People, symbols of race, evolution by their gods, and yet science still rejects the idea of a human race other than that made with our image. Theology clings to the 6,000 years of creation. Anthropology teaches our origins from the monkey, and the clerics reduce it to Adam 4,400 years BC. The narrative of the Bible does not begin with creation. It is commonly believed, but with the creation of Adam and Eve, millions of years after the formation of our planets, there may have been not one but 20 different races on the earth before the time of Adam, just as there may be 20 different races of people in other worlds. Now, concerning the excavations of Gobekli Tepe, the first excavations made in 1964 by the American archaeologist Peter Benedict, who only determined that there was activity in the area during the Neolithic era. In 1994, excavations were continued by Turkey archaeologists from the German Archaeological Institute under the direction of Klaus Schmidt, the archaeologist at the University of Heidelberg. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. This shows us the location of Gobekli Tepe. You can see it's right next to the border with Syria. Now, until then, the hill here in Gobekli Tepe was used by farmers to cultivate it, and they often moved large stones to arcades. The first researchers of the archaeologists showed that this is not a natural hill, and later they discovered the first T-shaped megaliths. When Klaus Schmidt discovered the temples, he said, "This place is a supernova. From the first minute I saw it, I knew I had 2 choices: to leave and not say anything to anyone, or to spend the rest of my life working here." Now, the archaeological site. Layers of many millennia of activity have been discovered. Researchers believe that the space was used for fertility ceremonies and believe that the magnolias in the center of the circle symbolize the women. The depictions, however, do not have the fertility motifs found in other Neolithic settlements, and while the anthropomorphic monolith T-shapes have no indication of sex, it is processed, it's complex, and it belongs to the cultivation period. This in itself makes the monument one of the most important archaeological findings for a long time. I believe, he said, we're facing the first depictions of God. They have no eyes, no mouth, no faces, but they have hands. They are creators. In my opinion, the people who created these statues posed fundamental questions of existence. What is the universe? Why are we here? Says Dr. Smith. Now, the oldest layer is believed to date back to the Mesolithic era and includes megaliths in a circular shape. The area is surrounded by a built stone wall. The second layer, dating to pre-B Neolithic ceramics, revealed several adjacent rectangular rooms, the most recent layer consists of sediments as a result of erosion and agricultural activity. And the architecture? The temples include megaliths in a circular shape which do not exceed 30 meters, about 100 feet. The stone pillars are T-shaped, and on them are engraved reliefs of animals such as foxes, scorpions, snakes, etc. In the center of each circle there are 2 megaliths. The walls are made of raw, dry stone, while the floor is made of limestone. The quarry for extracting the megalith was also found very close to the area where half-finished megaliths have been found. Glass tools and animal bones were found at the site. However, there is no evidence of dwelling or settlement, as no traces of domestic plants and animals have been found, and the interpretation given to the buildings is that they were temples. Now, the chronological context. All statements about the archaeological site must be considered preliminary, as only 1.5% of the total area has been excavated by 2008. The excavations have so far brought to light very little evidence for residential use, because only 98% has been excavated. Now, through the carbon dating method 14, the end of layer 3 could be determined around 9000 BC, that's 11,000 years ago. Layer 1 is estimated at 11,000 BC or earlier, that's 13,000 years ago. The second layer dates back to around 8,000 BC, that is 10,000 years ago. Thus, the complex was created before the so-called Neolithic Revolution, hence the beginning of agriculture and animal husbandry, which is believed to have begun after 9,000 BC, 11,000 years ago. Archaeologists estimate that up to 500 people were used to extract the megaliths, some of which weigh up to 50 tons, from the surrounding quarries and transport them at a distance of 100 to 500 meters, and at the beginning of the 8th millennium, the area lost its importance and over time was forgotten. It remains unknown why the entire area was deliberately covered with 30 to 500 cubic meters of soil. I again believe it was not covered. I believe it was some kind of geological event or combined with an astronomical event, such as a comet impact. Now, temple dedicated to Sirius, 11,000 BC, that's 13,000 years ago. Again, we're talking about the period of the Younger Dryas comet impact. The ancient structure was named Gobekli Tepe by archaeologists because of its unusual cycloid contour. It was cyclical. Although scientists have so far brought to light 4 such circular temples, it's estimated that their total number reaches 20. For unknown reasons, the descendants of the ancient builders filled these temples and covered them with sand 8,000 years ago. Again, I believe it was not intentionally covered with sand. I believe it could have been a mud flood, like some kind of a mud flood that we had, diatomic, the diatomic sands that we have, for example, flooding, the super eruptions that we had in Yellowstone, that type of an ash and sand covering, okay? Now, for unknown reasons, the descendants of the ancient builders filled these temples. They said, I've again been telling you, I believe it was not intentional filling. I believe it was geological event. Now, an answer to the mystery of the worship of these temples was given by Giulio Magli of the Polytechnic of Milan, who specializes in ancient astronomy. Magli, studying these ancient structures, concluded that the temples were worshipped by the star Sirius. They were worshipping the star Sirius, the dog star. The Italian professor said that this star first appeared in the earthly sky about 11,300 years ago. Its brightness in the sky occupied the fourth row after the moon, Venus, and Jupiter. Thus, the appearance of Sirius may have made a strong impression on the people of the Neolithic era. It has to do with Orion's belt, by the way, the star Sirius. Now, using computer simulations, the scientists determined the motion of Sirius from its appearance in the sky and then compared the resulting data with the geographical coordinates of Gobekli Tepe. It turned out that there is an imaginary straight line between the star and the center point of each temple when Sirius appears on the horizon. This happened in every sanctuary on the relevant dates before 9100, 8,750 and 8,300 years ago. Some speak of the cradle of civilization, others of the Garden of Eden, or of an ancient civilization that lived in harmony with nature before this fall, the fall of the humans, that is, Adam and Eve before the fall. But as you can see, the locations of Gobekli Tepe seem to fit perfectly with the birthplace of Jesus Christ, Bethlehem, but also Nazareth. So the distance of Bethlehem from Gobekli Tepe is exactly 700 kilometers, while the distance of Nazareth from Gobekli Tepe is exactly 600 kilometers. This leads to angles of 6.3 and 5.4 degrees respectively of the average circumference of the Earth. All this makes us think of the boulders placed in a T shape. This space is actually, the shape is actually the shape of the cross, as in the crucifix, the height of the head is significantly less than the length of the arms and body after the legs. So in practice, instead of a small t, we have a capital T. So are these symbols from the Bible, Garden of Eden, prophetic of the birth, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus Christ? All the elements lead there. The one thing I have noticed is that the Star Vega, the fifth brightest star in the sky, at the time the first buildings were erected on Gobekli Tepe, a time identical to Plato's Atlantis, is located near the central North Pole, celestial North Pole. To be precise, if we were to equalize the maximum height transit of the star, as observed from Gobekli Tepe with the slope of each of the three pyramids of Giza, it would lead to the following times. 9,681 BC, Marianas; 9,554 BC, Cheops; 9,326 BC, Hephren. Another thing that no one seems to have noticed is that the shape of the constellation of Lyra, of which Vegas is a member, is T-shaped, at least part of it. So could the T-shaped dolmens represent the constellation of Lyra? Also, in Gobekli Tepe, it seems that the monoliths have been placed so that they are not exactly vertical. The correlation of Pyramid Giza Gobekli Tepe, 9,552 BC. The Garden of Eden is equal to 1525. The Lyra of Apollo has been known since antiquity, but something else important is that the Star Vega in ancient Greece was called Lyra, from the constellation in which it is located. And we also know that Apollon equals 1061. Apollon divided by 2 is 1061 divided by 2, which is 530 and a half. Lyra is equal to 531. Apollo, however, was worshipped in Delphi. Delphi was built at the foot of Mount Parnassus in Greece, on the sacred mountain of Apollo. So why is Apollo also called the far north? But why Lyra Vega was a star that in antiquity showed the celestial north? The Assyrians called Vega Dayan, same, or judge of heaven, or if you want, judge of paradise, while the Akkadians called it Tir Ana, which means paradise life, or heavenly life. Note that the first letter of Tir Ana is T, which is a shape reminding us of the stone structures of Gobekli Tepe, the Garden of Eden. Now, does Gobekli, incredible, out of nowhere Atlantis sculpture, provide us that with a codification of what is about to happen, of course, the end of the world, things like that, some kind of a catastrophic event, Antichrist, things like that. Now, Geodetic paired with Bethlehem and Nazareth, how exactly 600 kilometers from Nazareth and exactly 700 kilometers from Bethlehem? Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. This is in Greek. I better go to the English text. Revelation chapter 12, it's concerning the woman and the dragon. The great sign appearing in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, crowned with 12 stars. She was pregnant, crying out in the pain she was about to give birth, and another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns on its head. His tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky, flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. The child was snatched up to God, to his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of 1,260 days. Now, let's remember, this is definitely a reference to the Virgin Mary. Okay, and Jesus Christ's birth, and also, of course, all of us Christians. Now, we're going to chapter 12, verse 9. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. And then verse 12, therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury, because he knows that his time is short. So that's the, and 13, in verse 13. When the dragon saw that he had been hurled to earth, he pursued the women who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given the two wings of a great eagle, so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the wilderness, where she would be taken care of for a time, half a time, out of the serpent's reach. Okay? Now, going back to this, geodetically coupled with the birth of Jesus Christ. How is that? When Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem, just 700 kilometers away in the buried Mesolithic ruins of Gobekli Tepe, Atlantis, the brightest star in the constellation Dragon, the Gamma of Dragon, or El Tanin, was perfectly aligned with the lower part of the track being sustainable. Thus, the site of Gobekli Tepe is associated with the devil, the fallen angels, and Lucifer. Gobekli Tepe being in Turkish Kurdistan, 53 miles from the Syrian border, reminiscent of the geostrategic plans of independent Kurds, Turkey again. Now, does Gobekli Tepe's incredible out-of-nowhere Atlantis culture provide us with a codification of what's about to happen, or the end of the world, or something? A very strange, changing event. Is it really a warning, or is it just a quote of knowledge and proof that even if the leaders involved are not going to listen, they're not going to change their plans anyway? So these events that have already happened, we just have not experienced them yet. And what about time or space travel, or from other planets? What about out-of-bounds objects or cultures? The double central columns of complex D, the oldest temple at Gobekli Tepe, aligns with azimuth 352 degrees. Sirius and the projection of megalithic enclosures of Gobekli Tepe by Giulio Magli illustrates the design. Okay, there's a video that I'll leave you a link below for. It's about 8 minutes, but you can watch that as well if you'd like. There's still a lot of strange things that we have to uncover concerning Gobekli Tepe, but I find that the strangest here is having to do with the locations of 600 and 700 kilometers from Nazareth and Bethlehem. And again, the dog star Sirius. Obviously, this had to do with this location, I believe, was somehow covered up by the Younger Dryas Comet Impact event. But please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Thank you.